Michael was the kind of man who could turn heads in a crowded room. With sharp cheekbones, with a body built from muscles and a confident swagger, he exuded an irresistible charm. Women were drawn to him like moths to a flame, and Michael, never one to deny himself life's pleasures, basked in their attention. But one encounter would begin to unravel his carefully curated life of hedonism. Sarah was unlike anyone Michael had met. She had an aura of purity, her every word dripping with sincerity. Her life revolved around her church, where she volunteered tirelessly, singing in the choir, leading youth programs, and organizing charity events. Michael met her during one such event when his best friend dragged him to a community fundraiser. At first, Michael had planned to slip out early, but then he saw her. And because it was her, she was standing near a table filled with homemade baked goods, wearing a simple white dress that contrasted beautifully with her dark, wavy hair. Michael's usual confident demeanor faltered for a moment. He walked over, pretending to examine the cookies. "These look amazing," he said, flashing his signature grin. Sarah looked up and smiled politely. "They're for a good cause," she replied, her voice soft and soothing. From that moment, Michael was hooked. Over the next few weeks, he found excuses to attend church events, much to the amusement of his friends. Sarah's calm demeanor and radiant smile piqued his curiosity. Despite his initial intentions, he found himself genuinely wanting to know more about her. They started meeting often, sharing coffee after Sunday services or walking through the park as Sarah talked about her faith and dreams of helping others. Sarah's faith and dedication fascinated Michael. She spoke about love in a way that went beyond physical attraction. Yet there was a simmering tension between them, a connection Michael couldn't ignore. One evening, under the soft glow of the streetlights, Sarah confessed her feelings for Michael. "I've been praying about this," she said, her cheeks flushed. "I care about you deeply, but I'm scared." Michael, ever the charmer, assured her that love in all its forms was beautiful. Their intimacy began with stolen kisses in hidden corners. Michael marveled at how someone so serene could be so passionate. But their romance came with a side of guilt for Sarah, who constantly wrestled with her spiritual beliefs. "I don't want to disappoint God," she whispered one night, her head resting on Michael's chest. Michael tried to comfort her, though he didn't fully understand her struggle. He believed love should be free and uninhibited. "We're not doing anything wrong," he told her. "We care about each other, and that's what matters." Their relationship was brief but intense. One day, Sarah grew distant, citing her need to focus on her faith. "I can't do this anymore," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, Michael, but I need to put God first." Michael respected her decision, albeit reluctantly. He moved on, as he always did, unaware that this chapter of his life would leave lasting consequences. Victoria was a stark contrast to Sarah. Where Sarah was calm and reserved, Victoria was fiery and spontaneous. She was a marketing executive with a sharp mind and a sharper tongue, a woman who took what she wanted without apologies. Michael met her at a rooftop party in the city. He was nursing a drink and gazing at the skyline when Victoria walked up to him, her presence commanding attention. "You look bored," she said, a sly smile playing on her lips. Michael raised an eyebrow. "And you look like someone who doesn't take no for an answer." Victoria laughed, a rich, genuine sound that made Michael's chest tighten. "You're right about that," she said. "Care to dance?" Victoria and Michael's relationship was a whirlwind. Their nights were filled with laughter, passionate debates, and fiery intimacy. Victoria had a way of making Michael feel alive, her energy rubbing off on him like a drug. She introduced him to a world of luxury and adventure, whisking him away on impromptu trips and exclusive events. One weekend, they flew to Paris on a whim, spending their days exploring the city and their nights wrapped in each other's arms. But Victoria had her secrets. Michael occasionally caught glimpses of her vulnerability she tried to mask. Once, he found her staring out the window, a wistful expression on her face. "What's on your mind?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her. She shook her head and smiled. "Nothing worth worrying about," she said, brushing off his concern. Despite their magnetic attraction, their relationship lacked the emotional depth Michael had with Sarah. Victoria was fiercely independent, and Michael often felt like he was just one part of her exciting life. Their relationship ended as abruptly as it began. Victoria's career demanded her attention, and she left for an overseas opportunity. "You'll be fine," she said, kissing him goodbye. "You'll be fine," she said, kissing him goodbye. "You always are." Michael was left with memories of their passionate affair and, unbeknownst to him, something more. Daniela was a free spirit, an artist who lived life on her own terms. Michael met her at an art gallery during an exhibition. She was standing in front of a large abstract painting, her head tilted as she studied the piece. "What do you see?" Michael asked, curious. Daniela turned to him, her green eyes sparkling with mischief. "Chaos," she said. "And isn't it beautiful?" Michael was immediately drawn to her. They spent the evening wandering through the gallery, talking about art, life, and everything in between. By the end of the night, Michael knew he wanted to see her again. Daniela was unpredictable, her days filled with spontaneous adventures and late-night conversations under the stars. She took Michael on hikes to hidden waterfalls, introduced him to her favorite jazz bars, and taught him how to paint. Their relationship was carefree and uninhibited, a stark contrast to the structured lives of Sarah and Victoria. Michael was mesmerized by Daniela's zest for life. Their intimacy was as much about the mind as it was about the body, a connection Michael hadn't experienced before. "You make me feel alive," he told her one night as they lay on a blanket under the stars. But Daniela's free-spirited nature came with a lack of caution. Michael's carefree attitude mirrored hers, and neither paid much attention to the risks they were taking. Daniela often joked about living in the moment, but Michael began to wonder if they were being reckless. Their relationship ended amicably, with Daniela leaving town for an art retreat. "Don't forget to live," she told him with a wink before driving away. "Michelle?" Weeks after Daniela left, Michael began to notice symptoms he couldn't ignore. A burning sensation, discomfort, and other signs led him to the doctor. The diagnosis was clear. Michael had contracted a sexually transmitted disease. His world came crashing down as he grappled with shame, confusion, and anger. Determined to find out who had transmitted the disease, Michael confronted Sarah, Victoria, and Daniela. Each woman's reaction told a different story. Sarah, horrified, swore she had been tested before their relationship and was clean. Tears streamed down her face as she accused Michael of betraying her trust. Victoria, ever the pragmatist, admitted to having had multiple partners but insisted she had been careful. She suggested Michael should have taken the same precautions. Daniela, the least surprised, shrugged and admitted she had never been tested. Her carefree attitude had extended to her health, and she apologized for her recklessness. Michael's journey to uncover the source of his illness forced him to reflect on his choices. The vibrant life he had lived, filled with passion and adventure, had come at a cost. He realized the importance of responsibility in communication and relationships, lessons he wished he had learned earlier. In the end, Michael's struggle wasn't just about his health. It was about finding a balance between desire and accountability, a lesson that would shape the rest of his life. Victoria was a stark contrast to Sarah. Where Sarah was calm and reserved, Victoria was fiery and spontaneous. She was a marketing executive with a sharp mind and a sharper tongue, a woman who took what she wanted without apologies. Michael met her at a rooftop party hosted by a mutual acquaintance. The event was filled with the city's elite, but none of them captivated Michael as Victoria did. She was standing near the edge of the rooftop, her black cocktail dress hugging her figure perfectly. Her red lips curved in a mischievous smile as she sipped her drink. Michael's usual confidence faltered slightly as he approached her. "Beautiful view," he said, motioning to the skyline. Victoria's eyes flicked to him, her smile widening. "It just got better," she replied, her voice smooth as silk. Mia's face skyrocketed. From that moment, the night became a blur of laughter, witty banter, and stolen glances. Victoria had a magnetic energy that pulled Michael in. And by the end of the evening, he knew he wanted to see her again. He didn't have to wait long. Victoria, true to her bold nature, texted him the next morning. "Dinner tonight." Their relationship was a whirlwind from the start. Victoria's lifestyle was fast-paced and exhilarating. She introduced Michael to a world of luxury he had only glimpsed before. Their first official date was at a high-end restaurant where they shared a bottle of wine that cost more than Michael's rent. "I like the finer things in life," Victoria said, raising her glass. "I hope you can keep up." Michael quickly found himself swept up in Victoria's world. They spent weekends at exclusive resorts, attended glamorous events, and indulged in their mutual passion for adventure. Victoria was a planner, always organizing their next escapade. One weekend, she surprised Michael with a helicopter ride to a remote vineyard. "Life is too short to be ordinary," she told him as they sipped wine under the setting sun. But amidst the excitement, Michael began to notice cracks in Victoria's seemingly perfect facade. She was fiercely independent, often brushing off his attempts to delve deeper into her thoughts. "You're prying," she would say with a playful smirk, but Michael could sense there was more beneath her surface. One evening, after a particularly lavish dinner, Michael pressed her about her past. Victoria's expression darkened momentarily before she laughed it off. "Angela, let's not ruin the night with boring stories," she said, leaning in to kiss him. Their intimacy was electric, fueled by their shared chemistry and Victoria's uninhibited nature. But Michael sometimes felt like he was just another piece of the puzzle in Victoria's meticulously curated life. She was always in control, and while Michael admired her strength, he sometimes longed for a deeper emotional connection. Their relationship took an unexpected turn during a weekend getaway to Victoria's beach house. After a day spent lounging by the ocean, Michael found Victoria sitting alone on the deck, staring at the waves. "What's on your mind?" he asked, sitting beside her. Victoria hesitated, then let out a sigh. "Do you ever feel like you're running from something?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. Michael was taken aback but tried to reassure her. "Everyone has their struggles," he said. "You don't have to face them alone." Victoria gave him a sad smile but didn't elaborate. The moment passed and she quickly reverted to her usual confident self. Michael couldn't shake the feeling that Victoria was hiding something, but he respected her boundaries. Still, the interaction lingered in his mind, making him question the true depth of their connection. As their relationship progressed, Michael began to notice inconsistencies in Victoria's stories. She would occasionally reference places she had never mentioned visiting or people he had never heard of. When he asked, Victoria would laugh it off, claiming he was imagining things. Michael's unease grew, but his attraction to Victoria's vibrant personality kept him from confronting her directly. Their relationship ended as abruptly as it began. One evening, Victoria invited Michael to a dinner party at her penthouse. The event was grand, filled with influential people, but Victoria seemed distant. After the guests left, she broke the news. "I've accepted a position overseas," she said, avoiding his gaze. "It's an incredible opportunity and I can't pass it up." Michael was stunned. "What about us?" he asked. Victoria sighed, her expression unreadable. "You'll be fine," she said. "You always are." And just like that, she was gone, leaving Michael with memories of their whirlwind romance and a lingering sense of unfinished business. Unbeknownst to Michael, Victoria's departure would mark the beginning of a series of events that would change his life forever. Michael met Daniela at an art gallery. She was a vision of eccentricity, her brightly patterned scarf wrapped loosely around her neck and her hands covered in streaks of paint. She stood before a massive abstract painting, her head tilted as she studied the canvas. Michael, intrigued by her intense focus, approached her. "What do you see?" he asked, curious. Daniela turned, her green eyes sparkling with mischief. "Chaos," she said with a grin. "But isn't that what makes life beautiful?" From that moment, Michael was captivated. Daniela's zest for life was contagious. She saw the world through a unique lens, finding beauty in the mundane and adventure in the ordinary. Their first date was unlike anything Michael had experienced. Daniela took him to a late-night jazz club where they danced under dim lights and shared stories over glasses of cheap wine. By the end of the night, Michael felt as though he had known her forever. Danielle's free-spirited nature led them on countless adventures. She had a knack for finding hidden gems in the city, from secret gardens to underground art shows. One afternoon, she took Michael to an abandoned warehouse where she had set up a makeshift studio. "This is my sanctuary," she said, gesturing to the walls covered in her artwork. "It's where I come to escape." Michael watched as Daniela painted, her movements fluid and unrestrained. "You're incredible," he said, unable to tear his eyes away. Daniela laughed. flicking a splash of paint in his direction. "You should try it," she said, handing him a brush. Michael hesitated, but eventually joined her, their laughter echoing through the empty space as they created a chaotic masterpiece together. Daniela's phobia became a shining masterpiece as they created a chaotic masterpiece together. Their intimacy was as spontaneous as their adventures. Daniela's passion for life extended to her love for Michael, and their nights were filled with laughter, whispered secrets, and stolen kisses. Michael found himself drawn to her unpredictability, her ability to live in the moment without fear of the future. But Daniela's carefree attitude sometimes bordered on recklessness. One evening, as they lay on a blanket under the stars, Michael asked Daniela about her past. "Do you ever think about settling down?" he asked, his voice soft. Daniela sighed, her gaze fixed on the sky. "Settling down isn't for me," she said. "Life is too short to be tied to one place or one person." Michael tried to hide his disappointment. He admired Daniela's independence, but he couldn't shake the feeling that their relationship lacked stability. Despite his reservations, he continued to fall deeper for her, drawn to her light even as he feared it would burn out. Daniela's impulsiveness sometimes led to questionable decisions. She often ignored warnings and brushed off concerns about her health and safety. Michael, caught up in her whirlwind, began to adopt the same carefree attitude. They lived in the moment, ignoring the potential consequences of their actions. Their relationship ended as abruptly as it began. Daniela received an invitation to attend an art retreat in Europe, an opportunity she couldn't pass up. "You understand, don't you?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement. Michael nodded, masking his heartbreak. "Of course," he said. "This is your dream." On her last night in town, they returned to the warehouse where they had painted together. Daniela handed Michael a small canvas, a vibrant abstract piece she had created just for him. "So you always remember me?" she said with a wink. As they said their goodbyes, Michael felt a pang of regret, wishing he had told her how much she meant to him. Unbeknownst to Michael, their time together would leave a lasting mark, one that would resurface in the most unexpected way. Weeks after Daniela left, Michael began to notice symptoms he couldn't ignore. A burning sensation, discomfort, and other signs led him to the doctor. The diagnosis was clear. Michael had contracted a sexually transmitted disease. His world came crashing down as he grappled with shame, confusion, and anger. Determined to find out who had transmitted the disease, Michael confronted Sarah, Victoria, and Daniela. Each woman's reaction told a different story. Sarah, horrified, swore she had been tested before their relationship and was clean. Tears streamed down her face as she accused Michael of betraying her trust. Victoria, ever the pragmatist, admitted to having had multiple partners, but insisted she had been careful. She suggested Michael should have taken the same precautions. Daniela, the least surprised, shrugged and admitted she had never been tested. Her carefree attitude had extended to her health, and she apologized for her recklessness. Michael's journey to uncover the source of his illness forced him to reflect on his choices. The vibrant life he had lived, filled with passion and adventure, had come at a cost. He realized the importance of responsibility and communication in relationships, lessons he wished he had learned earlier. And this is especially true for white men. In the end, Michael's struggle wasn't just about his health. It was about finding a balance between desire and accountability, a lesson that would shape the rest of his life. Weeks after Daniela left, Michael began to notice symptoms he couldn't ignore. A burning sensation, discomfort, and other signs led him to the doctor. The diagnosis was clear. Michael had contracted a sexually transmitted disease. His world came crashing down as he grappled with shame, confusion, and anger. Determined to find out who had transmitted the disease, Michael embarked on a journey that forced him to confront Sarah, Victoria, and Daniela. Each confrontation revealed more than Michael had bargained for, bringing with it not only answers, but also painful realizations about himself. Sarah was horrified when Michael told her about his diagnosis. Her wide eyes brimmed with tears as she vehemently denied being the source. "I've always been careful," she said, her voice trembling. "I trusted you, Michael. How could you do this to me?" Her words stung, and Michael felt a pang of guilt he couldn't ignore. He realized that his cavalier attitude toward relationships had left scars on those who had cared for him the most. Victoria, ever the pragmatist, responded with characteristic bluntness. "I've had my share of partners," she admitted, her arms crossed. "But I've always taken precautions. Can you say the same?" Her words cut deep, forcing Michael to confront the recklessness of his actions. He had always assumed he was invincible, that the consequences of his choices would never catch up to him. Victoria's scathing honesty left him reeling. Daniela's reaction was the most surprising. When Michael told her, she simply nodded, her expression unreadable. "I've never been tested," she admitted, her voice tinged with regret. "I guess I've always lived in the moment, never thinking about what could happen." Her words mirrored Michael's own philosophy, and for the first time, he saw the danger in their shared recklessness. Daniela's apology was genuine, but it brought Michael no comfort. He realized that their carefree attitude had led them both down a path of pain and regret. Alone in his apartment, Michael sat with his thoughts, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He replayed his relationships with Sarah, Victoria, and Daniela, realizing how his charm and carelessness had brought them into his orbit, only to leave them with lingering pain. He had been so focused on the thrill of the moment that he had ignored the potential consequences, both for himself and for the women he had cared for in his own flawed way. Michael's health became a daily struggle. The physical discomfort was a constant reminder of his mistakes, but it was the emotional toll that truly broke him. He found himself avoiding mirrors, unable to face the man he had become. The confident, charismatic figure he once was felt like a distant memory, replaced by a shadow of regret and self-loathing. Desperate for redemption, Michael sought therapy, hoping to untangle the web of choices that had led him to this point. In sessions filled with raw honesty, he confronted the root of his behavior: a fear of vulnerability, a need for validation, and an inability to form meaningful connections. The therapist's gentle guidance helped him see the patterns in his relationships, but the journey toward healing was slow and painful. Michael reached out to Sarah, Victoria, and Daniela, not to seek forgiveness, but to apologize. His conversations with them were some of the hardest he had ever had. Sarah's forgiveness came with tears, her faith guiding her to offer grace, even as her trust in him remained broken. Victoria's response was less forgiving. She listened but made it clear that she had moved on and that Michael's apology, while appreciated, could not erase the hurt he had caused. Daniela's reaction was a mix of sadness and understanding. "We're all human," she said softly. "We make mistakes and we learn from them. I hope you find peace." Despite their responses, Michael was left with a sense of emptiness. He couldn't shake the feeling that his actions had irrevocably altered the lives of the women he had cared for. The weight of that realization became a driving force in his quest for change. He vowed to be more mindful, to approach relationships with honesty and respect, and to take responsibility for his actions. But even as he worked to rebuild his life, the regret lingered. Michael's story became one of caution, a tale of a man who had everything but lost it through his own carelessness. He often thought about the moments he had shared with Sarah, Victoria, and Daniela. The laughter, the passion, the fleeting connections that had seemed so vibrant at the time. Now there were bittersweet memories, tinged with the pain of what could have been. In the quiet moments, Michael allowed himself to hope. Hope that he could learn from his mistakes, that he could become a better man, and that one day he might find forgiveness, not just from the women he had hurt, but also from himself. For now, though, he lived with his regrets, a reminder of the lessons he had learned too late.